Communication through music in the 50s began to rise quickly, some of these being because of the Happy Day effect, a post-war effect that led many Americans to a happier life. Families began a new form of mass communication through the radio broadcast network, whether it was fireside stories from Roosevelt or late-night jazz from a small club in Mississippi. Americans began to communicate through music. American youth began to experiment with these new sounds and dances. During this said Happy Days, America felt a sense of freedom, and most Americans began to see hope from the rough depression years prior. As the standard of living climbed, many Americans began to find time for such venues as rock and roll and jazz and anything that was involved with music. Ultimately, the 50s were a time of peace and prosperity, also known as the gumball era. Music communicated in numerous scenarios in the 1950s, many of which displayed the average individuals of that time. Whether it was a blues song about mistreated blacks in Mississippi, or a lonesome country western who sang about rural life on the farm. But the most important of all these states of communication to me is the one of rock and roll at late night clubs. Even though these clubs were racially segregated, many of the individuals found in them were found on both sides, dancing with both black and whites, something never heard of prior to this. Also found on the peopleshistory.com. Rock and roll is a type of music. It shook things up in the 1950s and 60s. Many musical styles around the world contributed to this new sound. Along with the African-American influence, rock and roll drew on lyrical melodies and recent European immigration into immigrants and country western music from Texans. First, the music began in popular small clubs and on the radio. Later, with the introduction of American Bandstand, teens found it easier to follow their favorite bands and favorite characters of music. Not everyone was excited about this music, though. Many parents didn't approve of the suggestive dancing, naughty lyrics, loud sounds, and fast beats, stated by 50sweb.com. In conclusion, the 1950s was the beginning in both change in American music and American ideology. As America began its golden years of music, a whole new type of music burst onto the scene. Rebellious, more exciting music. It is a time of freedom for freedom and experimentation in the 1950s that led to so many different genres that we see today. Thank you.